situating in the chair out of the way, so hopefully it doesn't squeak too much while we record this. But welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Mike Wollard. Thank you so much for stopping by and able to listen to this. I am working towards keeping these a little more concise, trying not to have 30, 40-minute ones where I'm rambling a ton. On days like today where I'm not going to have video for it, then I can use a cheat sheet to my right, and doesn't matter if I'm staring at a screen the whole time. But yeah, I'm just super excited to get these rolling again. And today I had tried to use a couple different mics so that I can have good video, and it just didn't work out. But hey, I'm recording anyways, and we're just chalking the video, so I'm not gonna let those things get in the way. I'm just not tech savvy in this way, and it's pretty easy for me to just kind of get deflated, or if right now, like, my desk is messy from trying a bunch of different things, which that stresses me out. And so it's just kind of one thing after another just to put out any sort of content. One little mishap, I even so for those who don't know, because it's only happened for like a day, but I'm just trying to broaden my client base and the people that I'm able to reach. My Instagram, my Facebook, things like that have been open and created since I was, in middle school, high school, whatever. And so 10, 15 years of people that, follow me just, as friends or whatever. The fitness has been a very small portion of my life. So those following me may either don't care or aren't necessarily potential clients, just, doing whatever I can to broaden my reach and my audience, etc. In order to continue to getting new clients and kind of spreading and keeping the company growing, obviously. And so with that, obviously TikTok is super important, but even more than that, just figuring out what are my hobbies outside of fitness, like how can I get into the realm of those other areas that aren't fitness related. Fitness is super oversaturated right now, and on top of that, a good majority of the people in the fitness industry that are oversaturating it maybe look the part but don't necessarily know the part. But let's be honest, like, people would rather look at and know nothing than it seems anyways. And so my desire to educate and to have all of that kind of takes a back seat to just whoever's popular. So that being said, what kind of hobbies do I have? When talking with some of our business coaches and such, and they're like, you've got to find niche markets or whatever that you can thrive in, you can stand out in. What's that for me? And for Angela, she's about to have their second child, so she's a pregnant mom who's about to have two kids who are 6 years apart, and then she'll be able to talk about postpartum and everything else. So like, that is her market right now, and she's thriving in it. And so for me, it's like, okay, well, what is that? And I mean, the only thing I really do is hang out with my puppy and wife, and then but video games are just kind of how I pass time, how I still connect with my brother who lives 3 hours away. It's how I connect with buddies that don't live up here, etc. So I was like, well, if I'm going to do that anyways, I have played video games since I was a kid. And so, I mean, if that's who I'm most relatable with, I don't necessarily want to record, base covers and stuff all the time and post those to TikTok. Plus, there's some freaks out there anyways that I can't really compete with. So I don't really want to do that. So I was like, well, maybe I'll just give the Twitch thing a shot. I feel like in the past few years I've become somewhat entertaining, and so maybe I can entertain a chat room and whatnot. And really the goal of it is, I mean, if it grows into something cool, then awesome. But also, if I'm just getting clips that I'm able to post to TikToks and to grow a following there, people who understand that same, or I understand their lingo, they're kind of like, hey, how are you healthy and play video games? And that might be a cool market for me to tap into. So started doing that just for a couple of nights now. So twitch.tv/IronMikeFPS, which just stands for first person shooter. But so there's my plug for my Twitch channel. Not why we're here today, but just kind of an update on content, just kind of like my direction with things, and just trying to put as much stuff under that Iron Mike umbrella, cast a wide net, and try to grow that audience so that, especially once the recession hits, things like that, that I have options, that growth continues to happen. And I mean, I am not above streaming or getting donations or whatever it takes to provide for my family and to get this student debt out of the way. If people want to send me money and to subscribe and support because I'm entertaining, and whether it's good gameplay or funny gameplay, I mean, if people want to support me in that way, then I don't care what any of you think. So there's that. But today is actually the episode that I started recording like 3 months ago and never got around to it, which is just essentially my hierarchy of supplements. That's probably the biggest question. How much do you need? How much do you not need? Like, what's the fun stuff? What's the crucial stuff? I worked at GNC before I was even a trainer in the fitness industry. I just worked out myself, and then got a job at GNC, worked there for 3 years. So I got a lot of experience and a lot of, I was the employee who spent half his paycheck on, supplements and running different stacks and things like that and trying to mix and match. And so I got to learn a lot, and a lot of it was beneficial and a lot of it was overkill. And but so just being able to kind of experience that myself, I can give my 2 cents on what I kind of feel to be the more crucial ones and what I kind of see as being more fun, and then kind of like that blended gray area. So to start off, kind of my crucial ones, and they're kind of the boring ones. If we're being honest, they're the ones that are just kind of making sure that you're healthy and functioning properly, and that all of your needs are met type of deal. It's like your multivitamins, your vitamin D, fish oil, and then obviously protein powder just to fill in those gaps. But with your multivitamins, vitamin D, and fish oil, making sure that all those micronutrients are covered, which fish oil doesn't cover your micronutrients, but your multivitamin and vitamin D, just from us being inside so often, I'm seeing more and more of those vitamin D deficiencies kind of come about. And those are super, super serious and can take a decent amount of time to kind of recover from. So the vitamin D is super important. COVID pretty much keeping everybody inside has really kind of affected that. So supplementing with that's something that I supplement with every day. I have like some extra strength gummies that taste good and easy for me to consume. Vitamin D3 is is the more easily absorbable form of vitamin D. Whenever I was at GNC, any female basically that walked through the door, I was trying to get them on vitamin D3. Once you hit, especially women as they get older, they're much more prone to osteoporosis and all of those sorts of bone issues. So that vitamin D really, really helps with making sure those bones stay strong. Multivitamin, we talk about macronutrients a lot, so your protein, carbs, and fats, but it really gets overlooked, your micronutrients, and making sure that you're getting adequate levels of all of those. For those of us like myself who don't eat a ton of vegetables, this is not a Band-Aid. This doesn't fix anything, but it does help at least a little bit. I may not be eating as many fruits and vegetables as I should be, so making sure I'm taking a multivitamin at least helps a little bit. Making sure that some of those micronutrients are adequate where they need to be. Little side note here, because I had a conversation with a guy a few weeks ago, just about how in these certain products, I'm going to try to be very vague so that it doesn't get awkward if somehow he happens to listen to this, but he was explaining to us how on the back of some of these supplements, and even some of like the healthy emergencies and things like that you're getting 700% of what you need. Well, that's not true. So when you're looking at the back of a nutrition label, those percent, your daily values, are to ensure that you're not deficient in those values. So when it says 100% of your daily values, that's 100% of what you need to not be deficient in whatever that micronutrient, what is that vitamin, mineral, whatever that is, that's the case. That's why when you look on the back of a multivitamin, it'll say 2,500%, little things like that. And so that's just to clear that up. When you see that does not mean you're getting more than you need. That's just keeping you 100%. Is that cool? You're not deficient in that. And again, it's still, that even varies person to person. On the back it says based on a 2,000 calorie diet, blah, blah, blah. So it's still going to vary person to person. But that 100% is basically your bare minimum. So anything above that, and again, there's an upper threshold too. You can have too much of, vitamin B12 and, little things like that are good when they're in the levels that they need to be. But then as you exceed that, obviously you can get into dangerous levels. That goes for water. You can drown if you drink too much water. So you just flush out all of your micronutrients, you flush out everything, and so then you get very sick. So too much of anything except for Jesus is a bad thing. So anyways, moving on. Protein powder, but we all know that protein powder is good. It's really tough to eat 250 grams of protein from grilled chicken. So protein just helps fill in those gaps. Obviously, the Fairlife protein shakes, you hear me talk about a ton. I do one in the morning and one at night. Basically, there's 60 grams of mine, 200 grams pretty much covered right there. And the rest I'll get from Whole Foods and maybe a protein bar if I'm kind of lacking still. So onto the tier 2, kind of your borderline necessary ones. I kind of have fish oil here too. Again, it's kind of floats back and forth. Those omega-3s, unless you're eating fish pretty often, and even then you're not really able to assess how much is actually in each fish that you're eating. And so I kind of fish oil just more as an insurance. It's good for lubricating joints, heart health, things like that. But it's, again, just kind of in that I take it because it can help fill in gaps and just to kind of as an insurance policy. Especially as you start lifting heavier, that's when the fish oils, MSM, glucosamine, things like that really help in the joints, keeping those nice and healthy as you are starting to lift really heavy. That kind of takes its toll. And so the other two I have kind of in this category are creatine and then pre-workout kind of. Creatine for sure. I've talked about it before. It saturates the muscle cell. So any sort of bloating is always going to happen in the muscle cell. It's going to help with recovery in between sets, helping you to get more reps, which is going to turn into more strength and hypertrophy throughout that process of working out. It's going to, especially as you lean out, your body needs to be able to replenish its ATP quicker to perform actions. And so the creatine helps to have that readily available. And so creatine's always, plus there's plenty of health benefits that I can't get into specifics on because I don't have the studies here in front of me, but as far as brain health, things like that, 3 to 5 grams a day, it's super healthy, it's very well researched, it's not going to do anything. You don't have to up your water intake. You should already be drinking enough water to be fine with it. So you don't have to drink 2 gallons of water to not fry your kidneys. You're good. Pre-workout, I kind of have it in between tier 2 and tier 3. I think does have a lot of benefits. It's not just a bunch of caffeine, caffeine helps performance, but it's not just a bunch of stimulant thrown into a can. The muscle pumps and things like that are all great and are all fun, but they have benefits and stuff as well. So pre-workout's kind of there for that. The mental focus, obviously the caffeine, which is why it's like it can be necessary for some people. I mean, I think if you're going in trying to hit PRs, you're powerlifting, you're doing things like that, I think it's pretty important to have a pre-workout. I know for me, even just the mental side of it, drinking a pre-workout and going to the gym mentally is borderline necessary for me. But at the same time, you can absolutely get great workouts, great results without it. So don't feel like you have to have a pre-workout or you're going to have bad workouts. For me, if I don't have pre-workout, I'm going to have a bad workout. I'm going to do an energy drink. I'm going to do something to at least have the caffeine aspect. But the beta-alanine is going to help with recovery and endurance. That's kind of the tingle that you'll feel as well. Some of it will have like some creatine. You're obviously going to have a vasodilator to help with the muscle pumps, the blood flow, getting blood into those muscles, making those micro tears. And then usually, those are really kind of the main benefits of the pre-workout. Pump, mental focus, the caffeine is going to help with endurance and stamina as well. So that kind of lines out the borderline necessary, the tier 2s. And then tier 3 being the fun stuff. So your pre-workout, they make just pump products that are just going to be either your citrulline or your arginine, things like that. They're going to help with the blood flow. BCAAs, I kind of have as the fun stuff. I've talked about it before. If you're getting adequate protein, then BCAAs are fairly unnecessary. But they're kind of a good insurance policy. Because BCAAs are your branched chain amino acids. So your leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And those are your three amino acids that are most specifically to help with repairing muscle, and so forth. And so supplementing with those is not always a bad thing. A lot of protein products have added in amino acids just to kind of help, but if not, then you can supplement with that. If anything, it's great flavored water to drink while you're doing cardio and things like that. Intra workout, so like I take Raw Nutrition has a intra workout carb formula. It's 25 grams of carbs per scoop. So usually my kind of pre-workout regimen right now is I'm taking creatine with like just some water and my multivitamins. I take all that first thing in the morning, and then my pre-workout is usually, if I haven't taken my creatine, that I throw it in with my pre-workout. There's like 1 or 2 studies out that say that caffeine may negate or slow down or whatever the effects of creatine if you're like taking them together. But I haven't seen enough to deter me from doing that. And I also haven't, people that I look up to in the industry also mix theirs. And so until they see it as an actual issue, then I'm not really too worried about it. But then once I drink that, usually as I'm arriving to the gym, and then I'll mix up the carbs with usually sometimes I'll do a scoop. Ghost has like a hydration formula, which again, kind of like flavored water with some electrolytes. I'll kind of mix those up together, and I'll sip on those while I work out. Especially usually I'm doing some sort of a heavy set, and then I'm going to more higher volume, like hypertrophy, supersets, things like that. So then I'll go to I'll start just drinking those carbs and stuff to kind of replenish those like heavy sets of whatever, because usually it's 30 to 45 minutes that I'm bench pressing alone, depending on how heavy I'm going and how long I'm resting. And so those carbs will kind of help replenish there. You can easily just do a Gatorade, in the middle of your workout, eat some pieces of candy, whatever, anything just to get some quick carbs in that are going to kind of help replenish and keep you going throughout the workout. And again, this is for like, if you're lifting for over an hour, usually like hour and a half plus is when those intra workout carbs, things like that, are much more prevalent. If you're in there for 45 minutes, it's very unnecessary, as long as you had a pretty decent pre-workout meal. And then again, everything else, anything else you can kind of think of is pretty much in the fun stuff category. This is all very situational. It's very much up to the individual, and kind of what your needs and such are. And so this is not law by any means, but this is kind of how I break up my supplements, how I kind of categorize which ones are necessary when I'm having to crunch down on my budget, which ones am I giving the priority to, which one's getting my money, etc. And then last few things, difference in pre-workouts versus stim. These are a few questions I had from some people, and then also some other Q&As here at the end just to kind of wrap up. Difference in pre-workouts, like stim versus pump. So with stimulants, they obviously, like, you can get stim and non-stim versions of pre-workout, and so the caffeine can either be there to help, or if you're lifting late at night, you can get some of the benefits of the pump type products where you're just kind of helping with the blood flow or the mental focus, but without having like the caffeine. So they do make those. Pre-workout recommendations. I'm loving Chris Bumstead's pre-workout right now. Thavage. Yes, I said that with a lisp. He has a lisp, and he really embraced that. And you can use all that. I think you can buy through Raw Nutrition's website, which you can use code IronMike for 10% off. They've been some of my favorite. I was using them before I was one of their ambassador type athletes. So it is not. Yes, obviously I get a kickback for using my code, but I was using their stuff, buying their merch, all that good stuff for, golly, almost a year before getting into their ambassador program. So I have not sold out. I was giving them my money first. And different kinds of proteins. So you got like your whey isolates, and those are going to be the quickest absorbing. And then your other main one is usually like your casein products, and those are used. It's a slower digesting protein, so you can throw it in like before bed, little things like that where it takes a little bit longer to digest. Even casein's gotten a little bit of it's not as good as like you thought it, as we've hyped it up to be, because you've been eating all day. And so by the time you get to bedtime, you're still digesting food from throughout the day. And so having a casein protein isn't as necessary, I don't think, as we perceived it to be, or at least that's kind of the studies and the murmuring in the education department of like the health and fitness. Various prescriptions on the markets these days. Got it. Yeah. So lots of kids. We're seeing high schoolers, college people that are hopping on various gear and things like that. Gear being steroids, SARMs. A lot of it is over my head, so I won't get in too much. I'll just kind of speak on principle and the little bit that I do know. The biggest issue I have with any of that is that you've got 19-year-old kids who are looking up to some of these professional bodybuilders. Actually, Christian Guzman and Chris Bumstead had a little Q&A that they were talking about it, and just how irresponsible some of the really famous people that are out there, how kind of irresponsible they're being with what they're running, the stack that they're running, the cycle that they're running, and kind of leading people to believe they're running a lot. So you've got these young kids that think that they have to do that to look a certain way. Some of them aren't even competing. Some of them aren't even trying to make a livelihood out of it. They just think that if they're going to be jacked like so-and-so, then they have to run all this gear. And that's just not the case. Does it speed things up? Yes. And does it get you past your genetic potential? Yes. But that being said, it's my biggest pet peeve to have these young kids come to me. It's like, hey, I'm going to run this. Hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what about, testosterone? I'm like, man, like, y'all don't see the future. You don't see 5, 10, 20 years from now, when you're 40 years old and you can't have kids, 30 years old and you can't have kids because you shot your testosterone because you were 18, 19 years old. Your testosterone hasn't even peaked yet, and now you're artificially injecting it, and now you're not producing it on your own because you don't know what you're doing. And so then when you cycle off, your testosterone plummets, and now you're screwed. So it really kind of gets me. I try not to get fired up because some people don't know, but then there are those that I've explained to, given plenty of grace to, and they want to do it anyways, and they're like, hey, I'm having side effects. I'm like, well, what'd I tell you? So that's kind of my spiel on any sort of like gear and things like that. Again, there's going to be 22-year-olds who have very low testosterone and need to supplement, need to get testosterone replacement therapy. That is totally different than running a SARM cycle or running a steroid cycle, or just being a kid who's impatient with the grind and wants to speed up results. Just trust the process, grind it out, do what the rest of us are doing, and get in the gym and work your butt off and eat how you're supposed to, and don't rush it. It's not worth it long term. And again, unless you're trying to compete, and even then, I'd say compete naturally. But if you're gonna compete on any sort of stage that allows it, cool, fine. If that's like your life's dedication and goal, and you don't care about the side effects or the potential to be infertile and all that good stuff, that's totally fine. But I just want anybody listening here to know, like, the side effects, the risks. Do your research, find somebody credible that you can do your research on. But there's very little in that realm that I recommend to anybody. So there's my spiel on that. Last couple questions here. We'll wrap up because we're getting close to the 30-minute mark. When to start using knee sleeves, and I'll also touch on a couple other equipment things. Knee sleeves are kind of personal preference. When you're getting into some heavy lifts and those knees start to become a little bit more unstable, that's what the knee sleeves are there for, to kind of protect those knees, protect those knee joints as it stretches. You're coming to the bottom of a squat. Those knee sleeves will kind of help you get out of the hole a little bit, but also just protect those knees. So I'd say as soon as you start getting a little bit more uncomfortable with your squat, or even the weight on the back, or if you start feeling any sort of instability there, they're pretty similar to me lifting with wrist wraps, which I'm about to touch on. So wrist wraps I use when I bench press. Those wrap around, they stabilize my wrists, and so that as I'm holding the barbell, as the weight's getting heavy, it's not pushing my wrists back. So it's kind of twofold. One, it's protecting my wrists, but two, it's also helping keep the force all in a line. And so one of the biggest mistakes I see with people bench pressing is they let their wrists break back. And so now you've got the force that's starting in your feet, driving all the way through your hips, getting into your back, and you're pressing it up. And so that force, I'll just smack the table, it's going to be loud. That force is coming from the elbow all the way through the wrist and into the bar. And so if your wrist is breaking back, that interrupts that direction of force. So you want to, as best you can, to keep that wrist straight. And so those wrist wraps help me to do that while also keeping the bar sturdy in my hand. And then you also have lifting straps. You'll see people using those on like deadlift, back movements. Those go around your wrists, and then a little strap hangs off. And so you wrap that strap around the bar, and so that you're able to grip and hold on to, heavy weight. If you're deadlifting 700, 800 pounds, that bar is going to slip out of your hands. Your grip strength is probably not where it needs to be able to hold on to that. Again, unless you're a professional power lifter type thing, but having those wrist wraps is really going to help with keeping that grip, being able to get your lower back stronger, being able to not let your your grip strength be a limiting factor for making progress in these heavy movements. I still much recommend doing grip strength stuff, doing forearm stuff. Don't neglect it. Don't let wrist wraps, knee sleeves, or lifting straps become a crutch for you. Be able to lift, practice without it. I still bench press all the way up to my heavy sets. All my warm-up sets I pretty much do without my wrist wraps, without my wrist wraps, to make sure that I'm not totally reliant on them. They're more of a safety measure, just a fail-safe. Quick macro rundown. This person's want to know, protein, carbs, and fats, and kind of their purpose for each. Protein for the muscle recovery, and it's also more thermogenic than the other ones, and so making it helps with like the fat loss side of things because it takes more calories. You burn more calories digesting protein than you do the other two. Carbs, quick energy, so pre and post workout, trying to get about 50% of your carbs for the day pre and post workout, and then the other 50% kind of sprinkled throughout the day. Whether you're lifting in the morning, lifting at night, does not matter. Carbs after 7 do not make you fat. So if you work out at 9 o'clock at night, still get a post-workout meal of carbs and protein. And then fats, slower digesting, great for hormone regulation, great for the joints, great for protecting your organs. And so making sure that you're getting an adequate number of fat. Carbs, you can have 0 grams of carbs. You'd be miserable, but you can have 0 grams of carbs and be fine. Fat, there is a lower threshold that you have to have, a bare minimum of fats that your body needs. Even my female and male, I don't think I have any clients that are under 50 grams of fat. I'm sure some could be and would be fine, but fats are important, so I usually just make sure that they have an adequate amount of fats, and then carbs are kind of where I taper as they plateau. And then timing of macros, real quick. The timing of those macros, so pre and post workout, you want carbs and protein. Really, you can kind of think of it as not a pie chart, which graph is that? It's the one where you just have the levels. Let's say you have 5 meals a day and you have those levels going up and down, and so you have 3 different categories in each one that kind of make up when to have it. So protein is just evenly distributed throughout the day. All 5 meals, 40 grams at each. So for me, 40 grams at each meal. And then you got carbs. All those are going to be mostly pre and post workout. So for me, I work out in the morning. So then pre and post workout, I'm getting pretty substantial amount of carbs. Usually like 75 to 80 grams before, and then 50 to 60 post. And then that kind of tapers off throughout the day. And that's when my fats start to kind of increase throughout the day. I don't have fats pre or post workout because it slows down the digestion of the food that I'm eating. I mean, I might have 3 to 5 grams, but I'm definitely not eating 20 to 30 grams of fat. It's really going to slow down that digestion, so you're not be able to use that energy, that food, as fuel during your workouts. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I break it up. Protein throughout the day, carbs pre and post workout, and then taper it. And then fats, much more filling, so I use those, when I'm sitting at my desk, when I'm working, things like that. Nice. Right at about 30 minutes. Hopefully this was informative. I tried to keep it as concise as possible. But yeah, I hope it was informative for you. Hope it was helpful. And yeah, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to use code IronMike with Raw Nutrition for any supplements that you need. And twitch.tv/IronMikeFPS if you're into watching streams that are wholesome, and you've got kids in the room, so no foul language, things like that. We have a good time. It's usually my brother or some friends, and we goof off and play some fun games, and yeah, it's a good time. YouTube, I'm also uploading there, so Iron Mike on YouTube, Iron Mike FPS on TikTok, all that good stuff. So I think that's all of my plugs. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.